They're probably for reading and not for distance.
Well, these are supposed to be progressives. But,
Oh,
so. Hey, everybody, so it's 7:02, Wednesday, October 11th, 2023. So I'd like to call this Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting to order. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize our two new members of the committee, Lois Hull and Jeffrey Preston. And welcome, Lois. Thank you for joining us. And I believe, unfortunately, Jeffrey's unable to attend tonight. He's at on business. Also with us are Martin Stefancic, Manager, Project Management Office, and Business Transformation, and Rahul Harajulu, Emo Consultant. And we're attending on behalf of Greg Perry, our Accessibility Advisor, who's could not be with us today. And so we'll start with our land acknowledgement. The town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They're the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas, recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1903. Shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries, our collective past, brought us to where we are today, to help us walk together to a better future. And please have a motion to approve the agenda circulated by Legislative Services. We have Allison. As well, raise your hand, or?
I did.
Okay.
That's Joanne.
Yes. Make sure I didn't have a habit of ignoring the screen. Okay, any declarations of pecuniary? May I please have a motion to receive the meeting minutes of September 6th, 2023. Peter, and it was seconder Lois. Or, yeah, seconder. Sure. I just second. Okay. Any comments or questions on the minutes? None. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that passes. So there are no delegations this evening. We'll move to first item 7.1, memorandum from accessibility officer for the site plan application SP 2022-07, 25 Mavrinac Boulevard. Have a mover and a secondary.
I'll move.
Peter and Joanne again. Actually, is anyone here? Are you going to speak on the item?
Sure can. Thank you, Councillor. So, me and Rahul take the committee through some of the site plan drawings, as well as orient you towards some of the comments that were made on the site plan application. Thematically, the comments relate to parking provisions. Repeat that. Okay. I can rewind that. I'll do my best. So we'll take the committee through the site plan, myself and Rahul, online. So he'll be navigating online and helping the committee orient themselves around the site plan drawings, as well as some of the items of interest. The main comments are related to parking provisions, specifically around the number of parking spaces, as well as the type of parking spaces in P1 or parking level 1 related to EV stations. We believe, or the comment that we are tabling for suggestion is that the EV station should be a barrier free parking spot. There are other items that will be apparent in the actual site plan as soon as we start moving through it. So if Rahul, you don't mind,
Yeah,
your
sure.
screen?
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Yeah, hello and good evening, everyone. Let me just start by sharing my screen here.
While I'm here, just a huge compliment to Greg Perry, because apparently it takes two of us to do one of the. So, so we'll do our best this evening, but here we go. Rahul?
Yep. I hope everyone can see my screen. Yep. Okay. So I'd like to start with a high-level view of the site plan, followed by the elevations, and then we'll get into the details and the comments that have been made by Greg. So this is the high-level site plan, which is this particular building is a 6-story retirement home and a seniors apartment. And this is located at 25 Mavrinac Boulevard. Now coming to the elevations. So this is the south elevation of the building, followed by the north elevation here. Then we have the west elevation of the building, followed by the elevation from the east direction. Now, I'll just move to the recent changes that have been made to this site plan. So the points that are highlighted in green are the changes that have been made to the site plan. One of them being 3 barrier-free parking spaces were moved out of the central driveway. And the second one is 2 outdoor amenity spaces were added on the west side of the building on the ground floor. So these were the 2 changes that were made to this particular site plan. Now, I'd like to go to Greg's memorandum here. So in Greg's memorandum, he has made 2 distinct comments. So the first one is to ensure a minimum of 1500 mm barrier-free path of travel in outdoor amenity spaces. This is the first comment that he has made. And the second one is to have a minimum of at least 5 barrier-free parking spaces in the underground level, which is the P1 level of the building. Now I'll go back to the site plan here. So this is the detailed plan of the site. So here you'll be able to see that there are 3 barrier-free parking spaces that have been moved out of the central driveway, and they have been situated to the side of the building. They have been relocated as per his comments. And after this, we'll move to the P1, which is the underground parking of the building. And in this particular parking, there are currently 3 barrier-free parkings near the P1 lobby. So here you can see there's a type A, type B, and there's another type A over here. So there are currently 3 barrier-free or accessible parking spaces in this underground level. But according to Greg's comment, there need to be at least 5 as per the stipulated requirement. So an additional 2 numbers of parking spaces which are accessible would be required. And that is one of his comments that he has made. Now, coming back to Greg's memorandum here, he has also commented that since this is a seniors residence, additional barrier-free parking spaces would be needed by the residents. That is 2 more barrier-free spaces would be required, which is above the minimum requirement. So this is one of his recommendations that he has made. Now, the 2 other comments that he has made as considerations are to have at least 1 barrier-free electric vehicle parking space. And the second one is to have a party room on the, which is located on the roof level, to have a barrier-free washroom over there. So these are the 2 comments that he has made as considerations. Now, if you go back to the plan 1 here. So this is the underground parking level. And here you can see that there are 6 electric vehicle parking spots at level P1, to which Greg has commented that at least 1 of them can be made as barrier-free. Now, I'd like to go to the roof plan of the building. So this is the roof plan of the building. Here you can see that there's a party room, which has an attached washroom. So he has recommended that this washroom be barrier-free as well. So these were all the comments that Greg has made, and yeah, so that's all from my end. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rahul.
Yeah.
Any comments or questions on the site?
Well, it just amazes me that we have a building that size and we have allotted what we think is an upgrade to 5 accessible parking spots. This is seniors, and I don't think that would meet the level of what may be expected for some parking. Because I mean, I have myself have a handicap parking sticker, and it's difficult for me if I get in a difficult situation to walk a distance or something from an end of a parking lot or something like that. And I just don't, and then you turn around and say you have 6 electrical parking things, but a lot of people that are in that age group might not even get an electric car. You know what I mean? It's just seems to be, how many people actually are going to live in this place?
Yeah.
Well, supposedly anyway.
Let's see how many units there are.
It's like about 50 units on that floor, 50 on the floor above. There's 6 stories, right?
Stories at
Yeah,
50, so it's
6.
300 people. So let's say half of that's a couple, like, so 150 anyway.
It's like a few less on some of the upper
Yeah,
floors.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just I just think when I go around town and I see what things that are happening, I just don't think that there's enough thought. I mean, it's fine to say, yes, we can get away with that many certain spots, but I think you have to think of the amount of people in the building.
Demographic.
Yeah, it's just, you know, and then to see that there's 6 parking spots that are electric, but it's only 5 to take regular cars that are handicapped. It's amazing to me. I just, I don't know. I'd rather drop 2 from the electrical and put in 2 more handicapped at least, you know, on top of it. So.
I guess, would they be assigned parking to a unit? I don't know how they're going to administer the parking, but that might matter too, because.
Yes, that might too, yeah.
Because there's more than 5 units that require accessible parking. That's going to be a problem. And then what about for visitors?
I saw a comment, Raul, if you could scroll, there was some commentary. And it did say there's 17 spots for visitors under zoning. But it doesn't show where those spots are. So to everybody's point, are the accessible spots for residents or for visitors? There ought to be both.
Yes.
I agree with Joanne that the way our AODA works and the rules that the town doesn't write but follows don't necessarily make sense when we consider the nature of the use of the space. It just makes assumptions that every building follows the same population needs, which is just not true. So I'm hopeful that, I think at the last meeting, Greg mentioned that he sits on an external group and that I believe the AODA is under review and there will be recommendations, or there can be recommendations made to change the number of spots required. I do think the other question is, it's fine to need electrical car spots, but are they also accessible? Because we shouldn't assume somebody with a disability doesn't drive an electrical car. So
Yeah.
not to let one cannibalize the other. And I like the idea of the washroom being barrier-free in the party room.
Roland Martin, regarding the parking, row 38 on page 2, it says, under comments, please note that the minimum number of accessible parking spaces is 5 parking spaces underground for use of disabilities, which meets the requirements of AOTA design. And then on the response, it says the development proposed a total of 6 accessible parking spaces, 3 underground and 3 below ground, meeting the AOTA design. So is the requirement then the comment, meaning minimum parking is 5 parking spaces underground? It says underground, does that mean it has to be underground? And then response says, I'm assuming that's from the developer, there's 6 accessible parking, 3 underground and 3 below ground. Is there a difference between underground and below ground?
I
Mr.
suspect
Chair,
they meant above ground.
so from my understanding from Greg, Mr. Chair, is that so wherever you have parking spaces, like say if it is above ground and some spaces are below ground, so the criteria for barrier-free spaces need to be met in both of them. So that's what I understood from Greg. Like, so it's not the combined number which needs to be 5, but there need to be accessible spots above ground a certain %. And if we have underground parking, so there needs to be a certain %, which accounts to 5 in this case, as underground accessible parking spots. So, but the looks like the contractor or the architect has like not understood it fully, which is why Greg has explained in his memo.
I think the comment about the population that the building's serving is really important, because it's serving seniors who likely need more spots than what's the minimum required by the AOT.
With any building, as population is increasingly getting older, you know. So,
We've noted the comments we can table those back to the to the builder with respect to considering the demographics and the population that this building intends to serve, and the interpretation that Rahul has spoken to. I agree with that interpretation as well. It's a bit of that comment needs to be clarified, and again, table that, but the minimum should be 5 underground. The comment there seems like it's just been 3 plus 3. It's just been added as there should be a distinction between below ground or P1 and above ground. So
if it's handicapped underground, which helps the people that live there, and it's above ground, are the same sizes of the space exactly the same? Because I notice even when we go around town and doing different things, if I can make it around town without sitting in a handicap spot, I will, because I figure it's easy. But if I can't walk the distance or do something, I'll go in the handicap. Some handicap spots, I can hardly get my door open because the handicap spots are so tight to the guy next door who's in a handicap spot. And then in other spots where you go, they've got plenty of room. And I just don't know what the criteria is. Are we meeting the criteria in every case? Or are we following the same thing? You know, I just wonder.
So I can, through Mr. Chair, I can see clarification with respect to the dimensions of parking spots, but there are type A and type B parking spots with specific dimensions. I can see clarification and get back to the committee with respect to what those are. But there's a distinction depending on the category.
Thanks.
The above grade spaces, the three, where's the path of travel for to the main entrance for those? I was just looking at the third page. So for that, if you park there, how do you get to the main entrance? Because it looks like on the ground level top view, there's terraces there, probably for the ground floor units. Is there a sidewalk or pathway?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So our understanding is that there are alternate entrances which are closer to the barrier-free parking spots. I believe the pathway would be through in this direction, through the side entrance, which is located to the east side of the building.
Can we look at that third page, the one right after the list of the
It's around the corner on the next wall.
They still have to walk.
that
You
one?
have to
there?
walk to get there or whatever.
Just looks like there's terraces to either side. So they have to go out into the road, or is there an actual sidewalk?
Looks like a road.
There is that very narrow strip in front of the terraces there, but I don't think that's probably not even a meter wide. Never mind 1,500.
And how close is the traffic to that? Is there traffic there?
Looks like it's like an entrance loop.
Yeah. Because once before we had that happen where somebody submitted a plan and it was across the driveway and they had to actually cross the driveway and go into the door on the other side. And then we found out from the company that they had transports coming through there and delivering stuff and everything. And that was a real problem. So we had to make them understand that they had to move them. So they moved them over to the other side. But it's a really important thing, like, to solve these issues, you know.
I
If
wonder,
I can
like,
add a comment, sorry. Is it
no, it's
okay?
okay. I was thinking that maybe the original location of the spots was to the right side of the front entrance there. But it looks like there's just landscaping there now. Sorry, Alison.
No, just back to the function. If I go to a retirement home and a seniors apartments, I suspect that alternate entrance is probably locked with either key or passcode requirements. So if I'm a guest visiting somebody, I likely have to enter through the main entrance to check in, or like, I'm just thinking practically speaking, if those spots were guest parking or visitor parking. Again, we don't know if that's resident or guest parking, but it's just doesn't seem accessible in the nature of using and then entering the building if you happen to be a guest in those spots. I'm just questioning if you can even enter in freely to that alternate entrance.
Accessible to me.
Those entrances on the, I guess, the east side of the building, they look more like exits. I suppose you could use them either way, but yeah, typically they're guarded by passcode or something in this type of building.
If the person gets out of their car, they have to walk around to them, though, if there's no other door.
Yeah.
That's not accessible parking. That's problem parking.
Well, particularly like in the winter and so on, it would be
Oh, yeah.
difficult to get to the
Or
front.
just a little bit of snow on the ground, or be slippery ice, or even water.
So yeah, but
And it's hard to tell what the path of travel would be from those doors into the main entrance area. Like if
That was
that's the way
kind
I
of a-
have to enter, can I even get to the front to check in? Like, that, just nothing about it feels accessible.
Scale, right? You got those comments, Martin?
Ms. Councillor Kim, so just a clarification will be tabled with respect to path of travel from the accessible parking spaces towards the main entrance as well as the side entrance, and clarification with respect to access points, whether or not it's passcode or other types of locks that are on the side entrance there.
And I wonder too, I mean, it's up to the developer, but the path in front of the terraces to the left of those spots. I mean, if that could be widened, that would be one possible path of travel. But it just looks quite narrow.
Anything else? Okay. Good feedback here. There's no further comments, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Item 7.2. Town of Aurora multi-year accessibility plan 2022 to 26. Have a mover and seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion. Please. Allison.
Haley?
Oh, sorry, it's Haley.
Yeah.
Martin, would you like to speak on the item?
So this is intended as a roundtable discussion with respect to, Rahul, would you be able to pull it up as well when you get a moment?
Sorry, Martin.
The multi-year accessibility plan, could you,
Yeah, let me pull it up.
thank you.
Give me-
So this is the town of Aurora's multi-year accessibilities plan. It's again tabled for discussion with the committee, open for comments and dialogue. And if you had an opportunity to review it or read it, we'd love to hear from this committee. Any feedback or thoughts would be appreciated. Thank you.
Just a second, Martin. Would you happen to have a link of the file?
Yeah, here. Here you go.
Thank you.
So the multi-year accessibility plan sort of sets the framework for 2022 to 2026 in terms of proactive actions that the town of Aurora is taking or will be taking during that timeframe to ensure that our community remains accessible to all patrons and citizens within the town and guests visiting this municipality. The town of Aurora has also set up the accessibility advisor position to manage the implementation of the multi-year accessibility plan. And Greg Perry has been tremendous in terms of leading this forward over the last year or so since he joined the town, moving on several initiatives within this portfolio, including accessible design standards, the site plan reviews, as well as ensuring compliance with WCAG standards and various meetings. So happy to hear any comments or feedback from the committee. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Martin. Any comments or questions for staff on 2022-26 strategy?
Maybe could I just ask for a refresher? We discussed, just looking at the minutes from last time, around this meeting of the Ontario Network of Accessibility Professionals this month. Is that still upcoming or is that happened?
So I know Greg is set to attend.
Okay.
Now, just I'll have to get back through Mr. Chair, I'll have to get back to the committee, but he is set to attend and he will be providing a briefing back to the AAC. I just don't know if he attended before he went away or just shortly after.
So maybe hold until next month and we can. get some
Absolutely,
feedback.
absolutely.
Martin, can you, what are the ways that our website can be compliant or be more accessible to those the extra assistance website? Is it just a matter of adding audio, or what does that entail, having our website be compliant?
So there is the standard through Mr. There is the standard compliance with the WCAG standard. So that's just a global standard. However, one of the things that I have been speaking with Greg about is the unique needs of individuals that interact with our information and our media, and how to best serve those individuals. Those are almost on an ad hoc basis. What we're trying to do going forward is with the addition of new staff in the communications office. So the web coordinator position has recently been filled, Councillor. That person will dedicate a little bit more time to ensuring better compliance or more responsiveness to the unique needs of individuals with different abilities. It's something that is important to me as the manager of the unit as well, because I often wrestle with sometimes a blanket approach versus a customized user experience type approach. And oftentimes I would rather try to provide a customized user experience or a client experience that's above and beyond what people are traditionally used to when we go the blanket kind of route. So it's something that we're actively thinking about and trying to figure out a best path forward with respect to how we can meet unique needs.
It looks like already there's this browse allowed on the town website. So is that something in that vein?
It is. So again, it's a standard piece of technology but we're constantly evaluating whether or not it's responsive and it meets the needs of people who are actually using the site. So browse aloud is one technology.
Is there sort of a centralized place where feedback on those sorts of things is gathered, like where residents or, where does that, how is that feedback directed on these kind of accessibility initiatives?
So through you, Mr. Chair, so we do promote the accessibility advisor or accessibility@aurora.ca email address, and that is one of the reasons why the town of Aurora is a leader in this regard and in this space, because we have through the support of council dedicated an actual FTE to be able to spearhead some of this work, which is just incredible that we're able to do that here. So that's one way. We also have feedback forms directly on the website that do get routed through our Access Aurora Center. So that's through Ivy Henrikson's team, and she's amazing. If you've ever had a chance to interact with Ivy, definitely somebody who believes in the community, believes in excellent customer care, and always is very responsive in routing feedback to the appropriate departments and appropriate people in the town of Aurora. So those are some of the mechanisms that are available. Phone calls and emails, even directly to me, are also available. So the town of Aurora is generally very, very responsive to the community, trying to do its best and trying to serve as many people as possible. So
Is there ever any outreach to solicit feedback that's not sort of, because I often find when there's feedback on these things, it comes when someone's dissatisfied with something. Right? Is there sort of an email or flyer or something that goes out so it says, tell us how we're doing, or
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we've had several resident engagement approaches. In 2021, the town of Aurora conducted a service delivery review. So that was a review of all municipal operations. And within that, we included a resident engagement survey. So one of the, and then subsequently to that, last year, we also conducted another resident engagement survey, more global. But I hope, again, that you can appreciate that civic engagement is challenging.
Yeah.
So the people in this room are civically engaged and want to participate, but it's with about 60,000 people across the town of Aurora, sometimes it's difficult to engage with a lot of people across the board in any municipality.
Yeah, for sure.
So we do our very best to try to speak with people directly at the front counters, gain feedback through council meetings, through Councilor Kim, through resident phone calls, my office, feedback medium on the websites, again, through emails with the accessibility advisor, short of going to people's doors. So it's yeah, so we would love to hear more. We would love to hear people's thoughts, but sometimes it's just very challenging for any government institution to try to get that feedback.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely appreciate it. The only reason I was asking is you can, it sometimes skews priorities, like in a large scale plan like this. If you get feedback consistently that's sort of negative on one particular aspect, you might prioritize that rather than, things coming to mind that are not necessarily as a result of some sort of dissatisfaction with the service. So, but yeah, very tough to get responses.
I would love to have 100% civic engagement.
Sure. Yeah.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Is that,
It's Allison.
Allison?
Yeah. Just with respect to your comments around communication and customization, the thought that came to mind is I could spend all day and then some advocating and expressing my individual needs on any given event or access needs. And it's tiring, so I pick and choose my battles. So I hesitate when we have to put any onus on disabled folks to express their need versus ensuring we're at least doing the bare minimum broadly, so that they don't have to express their needs. Like, we want to reach a point where people don't have to come and share, this is what I need, because it should just be as universally as accessible as we can be, with the caveat that such thing doesn't exist and we will have to react, and being available to react is important. To Peter's point, and I've discussed this with Greg, and I realize there's legal considerations and disclosure considerations, but I struggle with any initiatives where we have no concept of what the needs are within the community. So for example, I expressed accessibility needs at my local park. I was probably the only person to express the need, so that looks like a low threshold. There's not enough of me or enough disabled people speaking up, so then those access needs went unmet. So I think it's that struggle between pushing through things where enough people speak up, but from an accessibility perspective, sort of believing that we shouldn't have to have a certain threshold of disabled people speak up to meet that need. It should just be so, and that way people will come. And especially when we look at community events or spaces, it shouldn't just be about our current population, which we don't even know we don't have that data. So it's not about the numbers we have now, it's about making sure if people move to Aurora that they're also included. So anyways, a bit of a tangent, but just wanting to make sure we just push for the best regardless of the number of people that speak up. Because it's the right thing to do, and there are needs that aren't being met, and we might not be hearing from those people because they're tired and spending all day advocating.
It's a good point, Allison. Any other comments or questions? Plan?
Can I see the last page? I'm just looking to see if there's opportunity for people to provide feedback.
There
the
is
very
a,
end.
there is an email, like a person.
So you said last page?
Yeah, like at the end, is there an offer for people to provide feedback?
There's a person, yeah. Yes.
For more information?
Mr. Chair, so that Matt's no longer with the town, but this plan was published in 2022. So that phone number goes directly to Greg.
Okay. But it's not asking for feedback. Perhaps there's opportunity at some point. I don't know how, when you'll refresh this, but if you could ask the reader if you have any feedback or suggestions, please contact.
One last question. In terms of the audible crosswalks, there's 3 locations that's listed in the plan. Do we have any audible crosswalks now? And is the plan just to have those 3 that's indicated in the plan? Said Wellington, Wells, Young and Henderson, Young and Kennedy. But are those intersections the plan over the next 4 years, and we don't have any audible crosswalks now?
Mr. Chair, I have to speak with our planning counterparts to get an inventory of audible crosswalks within the municipality. I know just in conversations with Greg that there is an active plan to ensure that crosswalks are accessible, that's audible plus tactile plates across the township. And I believe there is talks of a phased approach in terms of how we're going to address that need. But I'll table that question and get back to this committee with an inventory of what that looks like.
This is just anecdotal, but I think I've heard the chirp at one of the ones near to where I live. So I think there are a few here and there.
Yeah, it's one I heard.
Yeah.
There's no further comments or questions. All the votes. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Don't have any informational items. I'll go around, but any kind of raise of hands of anyone with any new business.
I have some
Allison?
thoughts, yes. Excuse me. One of my questions and comments, I've spoken many times about parks, and I think that will be my hill to die on this committee. And I've talked with Greg about, and I don't know if this should have been brought up with respect to the accessibility plan, but creating more of a checklist and a wish list of what we hope all parks would have at a minimum. So I'd like to, I guess, table the idea of this committee developing something that would be used by our parks team as they build new playgrounds and make changes to old playgrounds as that comes up. My other question is around, I've seen some postings online about upgrades to SARC the Stronach Arena. And so I'm wondering if that can be brought back to this accessibility committee to review what those changes are, and if there's any in this accessibility, sorry, in the multi-year plan, it does mention upgrades to arenas, and I can see some references to rinks and accessibility needs. So I'm wondering if any of this plan has been applied to those changes. But I'm hoping this group gets to review those changes. And then the last thing I wanted to raise, which again, I'm acknowledging there's legalities to it, but I struggle that we don't have any demographic data or broad idea of who our disabled community members are, and what are they missing from town, what are their needs. I realize there's challenges with trying to do any kind of survey, although I feel like when I did the parks survey prior to them building their multi-year plan, there was some demographic data asked, but nothing to do with accessibility needs, which as a disabled person, I'm happy to disclose as long as I understand what the use is. So I'm curious what our abilities would be to collect some better data to better inform some of our activities as a committee.
Thanks, Allison. Those are some good points that you draw out. Martin, do you know offhand or Rahul whether we get this type of data from like a federal census, or are we allowed to collect that data from a municipal perspective? How would we go about doing that?
Mr. Chair, so the federal census does provide this type of information, but for that's Canada-wide and provincial, so it does not isolate information, nor does it segment the information based on need. It has broad categories with respect to what differently abled is, and so the types of information that we spoke about as well. We spoke with our town solicitor with respect to this type of approach. The legal opinion was that this is something that we should not pursue with respect to building a database or any type of information that would be personal, because it leads to very particular implications. However, there could be other methods that we're open to, and if there's any suggestions from the committee in terms of how to approach this, perhaps from local community groups or community organizations, or any insights that can be gathered, we'd be open to receiving any of that type of information.
So the region does the disability stats taken from the federal government. They do a York region analysis, but it's not detailed to municipality, and it's different categories than what we might want just based on what the federal stats are. But it is at least something that give you an idea of York region. And I know that the federal government is releasing those stats, I think in December this year, if I remember right. So so the region will be providing a York region outlook again. The last one they did was in 2019, but it's not detailed, but it's something.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so we would consider that a secondary source of information, and the traditional approach to that type of I guess inference or analysis is to retain the proportions that are national, and then sort of graph those proportions down to the municipal level. Practically speaking, let's just say 18 to 20% or 30% of people across Canada and this is very simplistic, but up to 30% of Canadians identify as differently abled, then they would maintain that proportion down to the regional level, and then subsequently try to maintain that proportion down to the municipal level. However, that still doesn't allow us to make any inferences in terms of service design or responsiveness, because they're broad categories.
Mhm. But it is something.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think he can generalize and stuff, but it's all that we have, right? Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are involved in this themselves, having worked with the individuals for a number of years. They won't want to be saying that they have this issue, where other ones will say, yes, I do have this issue. But a lot of them will say, they won't let on that they don't, there's anything wrong with them, and others just carry on and do things. But a lot of them just don't. It's the same with anybody, like an older person getting older saying they can't do something. They're just human beings who, run their lives the way they see fit, actually. But it's just that if we can give them something to help them, just bringing them in and, treating them with kindness, and it's a big thing. So.
I wonder if there's a way to kind of flip the approach, so you're not asking individuals to disclose a disability, or rather to say, could be anonymously too. Would you make use of service X, service Y, service Z if it were available? So, we are currently revisiting our parks, our playgrounds. Would you make use of an accessible swing? Would you make use of a, rubberized surface? And just, it's not perfect, right? Because voluntary surveys, especially there, you get a lot of non-responses. So the stats tend to skew as a result, but again, it's something.
Is there no sort of universal approach to new parks being built? Like, why would we need to know that people live in that area, need it? Why wouldn't we just make parks universally accessible? Because it helps with pushing strollers, it helps with all sorts of things besides accessibility. Is that
Part of the struggle is the mandate, like the parameters for individual pieces of a park being qualifying as accessible can be added, and then the parks can say, well, we added these components. So for example, I'm near Tamarack Green Park. There's an accessible swing, but it's on the other side of the park to the ramp entrance, and there's wood chips. So can a family get to the swing to use it? Not really. So it's partly that the components that can make up accessibility and the law and the AODA, and then the folks in charge of planning, there's just this disconnect between the functional use of a space and how someone participates. And then this assumption when you go past any park and you don't see kids with disabilities visibly, thinking there isn't a need. Well, there isn't, you're not seeing them because it's not accessible. So you won't see us until it is in a meaningful way. But part of that is also a national standard. So I know the rubberized surface is not a minimum requirement that's like above and beyond, and it's exorbitantly expensive. So many parks won't prioritize that. And I think, like, asked Greg about this, and he said that the training is similar to what we received on our committee. And I find I work in an organization that has ample resources for all IDEA training. So I have actually signed up to be a delegate at the next town council. So I will present on behalf of my work. So I've confirmed with Greg, there's no conflict of interest, but I will present from Holland Bloorview around some of the services we can offer to the town in terms of not training specifically, but discussion around disability and anti-stigma. And I will present some of the resources we've created around playgrounds and parks and employment, disability employment, and other resources that we can share from our organization with the town. So if anyone wants to show up on October 24th, I will be there. But yes, back to your point, the parameters for what makes a park accessible still are outdated.
But you made the point before about having a list, and I think if this committee could create those parameters perhaps in this list, it would be helpful going forward with the development or redevelopment of play areas. And then you also get into where the schools own them versus town versus other entities, private runs.
Yeah, that list would be useful for private businesses too, I think, and just guidelines.
Just
not-
guidelines,
Yeah,
yeah.
not requirements, but guidelines.
I think it's a great idea also.
You brought up a good point because I read, I think in the parks plan, they made a comment around school playgrounds being
Yeah,
available to community, and Highview had the only really meaningfully accessible park, which they've had to tear down because it was becoming a liability and unsafe. And it's unfortunate because right now the town doesn't have any obligation to support a rebuild or provide any financial assistance. The school board is not making it easy for the school to fundraise and apply for grants, and
Mm.
they're kind of at a standstill. Meanwhile, many kids have nowhere to play at school, at a school that has a high ratio of kids with disabilities who need that space. So I would love a world where our town could do the right thing for those kids and help support getting that playground rebuilt quickly in the absence of a town park that's inclusive.
Mhm.
I'm not sure who mentioned about the work kind of list for private businesses and stuff. There is stuff out there. I know we had talked about creating something in our previous committee. I know when I was going out and visiting businesses and offering advice, Matt, who was the old accessibility advisor, had sent me a bunch of the documents that actually have a lot of the information in it. So there are some of those things out there. I'm not sure if they're on the Town of Aurora website, but I know they are out there.
Thank you, Haley, Allison. Anyone else for new business? Not then kind of a motion to adjourn. Peter? Seconder, or are we gonna be here? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, that carries. Thank you, everybody. Bye, Haley, Allison. Thank you, everyone.